All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? We are live here with the Shred Effect with our good friend, Eddy Perez, president of Equity Prime Mortgage. And Eddy, man, you have had a busy last couple of days, my friend, and we're excited to be diving into it with you because as we titled this episode, GSE Reform, we're going to get into that here in a second, but is U.S. housing in a better place? And we're going to get into that as well. But Eddy, thanks for joining us, my friend. Always a good time having you on the show, joining us, hearing your knowledge, your expertise within the industry. And man, first and foremost, I got to give you a shout out. Your 22 push-up challenge has, in my opinion, kind of gone viral within the industry. You have had so many incredible, and for an incredible cause. That's the thing that I am so excited about. And some people, Jason and I were having this conversation yesterday. If you are just or if you're not familiar with the 22 push-up challenge, also known as the 22 kill challenge, is raising awareness for veterans. Actually, you know what? I'm going to let you talk about it, Eddy, because you kind of started this thing. I want to talk about this just real quick, and then we're going to get into everything else. But man, you have truly made a difference.
Obviously, veterans hold a very special place in my heart. And I know they hold for everybody, but my family lost all their freedom and they had to come to America leaving Cuba. So freedom's always had a little bit of a different meaning for me in the sense of they lost their freedom. So veterans from a very young, since I can remember, my father was always one that said, pay respect. It's the reason we're free. It's the reason we had to leave our country because we lost that. But more importantly, my buddy Oliver Adams, who is a military veteran, was one that told me that troubling statistic that blew my mind. And then he had told me how a younger I think it was a high school kid, created whole 22 and 22. Well, then, long story short, on August 22nd, I said, yeah, let's do this, but let's make it fun. Let's throw a challenge. Let's bring our own spice to it, and to be honest, it's when I put KP on from PRMD. He did it from a boat, and all I got to say is the rest is history after that. You know, it's been challenging. There's been variations thrown in. Some people couldn't do push-ups, so they've done squats. You've seen some people tell 22 stories, but more importantly, the number 22 is what keeps getting highlighted. And then I've had a lot of private messages where people said, look, I don't want this to become the ice bucket challenge. So what do? Coincidentally, as an organization, we had already started giving a certain amount per closed loan to Leashes of Valor because I believe that they kind of hit the core that everybody can relate to. Obviously, I know that a lot of Americans love veterans, and in our business with so many refis been up, there's been a lot of VA IRRRLs, which is good. And then on top of that, you know, the whole taboo of mental health is something I talked to my vlog of 4 or 5 months ago. So that obviously appeals to people because we've dealt with anxiety, depression, you know, so many things that affect people. And they kind of put all three together. You know, they're training dogs to help somebody with mental illness that is a veteran. You know, what's there not to like about the whole movement? Just if you're proud to be an American and just proud to help your fellow man. So it's been exciting. A lot of people said shout outs, and it's just been, you know, the 22 challenge is just that challenge to challenge other people because today's my final day, but I don't want it to end. I want to keep seeing these videos by so many people because this awareness has really become the vet suicide awareness movement.
Which again there's so many people that you have got involved and everybody in their own way. And hopefully, and I'm not going to name names at all, but I actually had an organization reach out to me who did this for the completely wrong reason. They just wanted to do it for publicity. And I was pissed. I was frustrated. And like, I won't get into too much detail, but I even ended up calling somebody out and they like jumped all over me about it. Like, you weren't supposed to do that. We were going to do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. Like, so if you are taking this challenge, if somebody has challenged you, please do it for the right reasons, raising awareness for veterans. This is not a PR stunt. This should not turn into that. And if you're thinking of it in that way, you're absolutely doing it for the wrong reasons. And you really shouldn't just take part in it. So
I agree. It should just be for raising awareness that mental health, not even, you know, obviously with veterans, it's very important, but still, you know, the statistic that I heard, and this is Suicide Prevention Month, there's, I believe, 129 a day. So this is just what I think we need to do for our fellow man and our fellow Americans and just do the right thing. And if somebody just wants it for publicity, that'll eventually come back on them. That's all.
Always will. 100% agree. So anyway, I'm glad we were able to touch on that. But let's jump into, you spent some last couple of days in Washington, D.C. You've been here and been talking about reform. And we had a conversation a couple of days ago, right as you were going into this. And number one, I'm very excited to hear about, because a lot of mortgage professionals, all of you listening to this, you need to share this episode right now. If you are listening, please, we don't ask this very often, share this episode out. Tag other mortgage professionals, share it into groups that you know, because we're about to talk about something that people are not aware of. And Eddy, this is something that can have a huge impact, a huge effect on mortgage professionals. So let's talk about the GSE reform and what's actually happening.
Yeah. So last week, the administration put out their paper to do the GSE reform. But more importantly, before that, in May at the secondary conference for the Mortgage Bankers Association, Calabria, who's in charge of the FHFA, had already said that he had been given a mission to get them out of conservatorship, because we have been there 11 years and we've kind of been kicking down the can. And the joke has been our children are going to be doing GSE reform, or we've been doing GSE reform since 1892, as the chairman, Chris George, says, which is very funny, but it's coming. And they said that the GSE patch will not be renewed. And what a lot of people don't understand is if the GSE patch expires, 20% of loans today conventionally would not qualify.
Oh, whoa.
And this isn't even what worries me, because I think 1 or 2% DTI, you're dealing with A-paper customers. They'll find a way to get it down.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
The challenge is the psychological effect. The people that are maybe borderline conventional FHA get through 17 and 18 with a huge pricing war. That's the psychological effect that'll come. 20% gets sucked out of the industry. You're going to have these crazy price wars. You're going to have originators that are calling up their bosses like myself, other organizations who are saying, what are you doing to pricing? You're doing funny things, when it could be nothing. It could just be that somebody else is viewing this as a competitive advantage. And after going after such a struggle for 2 years, I just don't think that we need to do any self-inflicted gunshot wounds. But essentially, GSE reform is coming. There was a hearing that was just handled 2 days ago where some people are saying, to your point, that the housing crisis, the housing situation may be a little bit off, and we can get in a little bit more detail separately, but it's coming. They're going to bring action. The good thing is the paper had a lot of suggestions that the Mortgage Bankers Association brought that represents banks, brokers, and lenders, because some of that unity that people are trying to say doesn't exist. We all need each other. Brokers are getting a lot of loans from independent mortgage bankers. Independent mortgage bankers are getting their lines of credit to lend on from banks. So to think that we are not all in this together, I think is a vast fallacy. But the GSE reform is coming, because, and there's other agencies involved, that it's an administrative thing, and they want to get it out of conservatorship. And if they get it out of conservatorship tomorrow, that GSE patch, we're not even given the time till January 1 of 2021. It's gone if it comes out of conservatorship. So we need the GSE reform, because one way or another, they're going to get action done. This administration is not joking that they want to not hurt the taxpayer and put them in a position that we don't have the same challenge that happened in 2008.
So let's talk about this, because there's a lot of people probably listening to this are saying, okay, so GSE reform, who is that controlled by? Like, wait a minute, who's making all these decisions? I think that goes over a lot of people's heads, because again, when we're so focused on our business as mortgage or real estate professionals, we're just so focused on that. We don't understand that these type of issues that, again, can have a huge impact on our businesses, we don't even understand them at the lowest level. So who is making these reforms? Because I guarantee there's a lot of people like, well, is this the CFPB again, or is that? And
no, not the CFPB. I want to be very clear on that. No, when conservatorship happened, they created the FHFA. Correct. And the director of it, who was Mel Watt, recently is now Calabria. And he is the one been given a mandate from the Trump administration to get them out of conservatorship one way or another. And it could be by turning up the dial, where all of a sudden it triggers reform, or more importantly, it could just be a congressional act. And, the administration has laid out their plan. They laid it out last week. About a month or so ago, the patch, which was essentially given where you didn't have to have a 43 debt percent ratio, DTI ratio, you can go up to 45, or what you got through DU wouldn't even matter today. And because they want to bring back private money into the market, is where the changes are coming. So it's coming from the administration and as well as from the director, who, just to let everybody know, even if there's an administration change in 20, that doesn't mean he changes his job either.
Right.
Because Mel Watts stayed 3 years afterwards. That's a 5-year appointed position.
Wow.
So that is, it doesn't mean like, you'll have people say, oh, if the Democrats take over the presidency, then we will not have to worry about it. No, that's not true. It's just not true. And that's the challenge is, and look, I think GSE reform is a good thing. I want to be very clear on that. I think it's needed. I think we need to solve the ills, because what you're seeing in certain communities in America, first-time home buyers are not being able to accomplish things because of such of the guidelines. And I think we need to address it so that more people can get into a home, but more people that can afford it. I don't want to just give it to anybody. But at the same token, if somebody is of A paper quality, they've talked about debt to income not being the end all be all, other factors. I think we need to look at some of the common sense that used to happen in this country before the automated systems came in. And not that the automated systems are bad. I just think that we need to have a very healthy discussion. The great news is it's a very bipartisan subject. If you read up some of the bills, though, you have some political parties saying it's going to be too expensive. You have the other political parties saying we need to get out of it. So there's still going to be some tug of war. However, I will tell you, having been in DC, there are a lot more Republicans and Democrats that are definitely working together, even though that's not CNN worthy.
So how should your standard, your regular originator, or even branch managers, this really does affect everybody. How should we be involved? What should we be doing? How can our voice even be heard at this point? Like, this is coming. This is just around the corner. So what should we be doing as an industry? That's what I really want to make sure we focus on today.
2 things.
Okay.
And one of them I can't touch on just for the federal election laws. But the first one is they need to sign up for MA, which is the Mortgage Action Alliance.
Okay.
That only is not a federal thing. That's a local thing. So in other words, right now there are 21,000 members. Everybody should be a member. It's free. There's an app. You sign up. And from there, even a local issue, that's what a lot of people don't realize. There may be something that's offending somebody in Maryland that won't be affecting somebody here in Georgia or Utah where you're at. However, it'll give state and federal things, and then they say a call to action. Well, that's completely filled out. And nowadays, just so everybody understands this, the politicians are not, the old school days of writing a letter that made such a difference. They're going to look at how many thousands of emails they receive on one subject, and it's literally a click of a few buttons that gives statements. So that's option one. And once you become a member of the Mortgage Action Alliance, you can then, support the industry and the lobbying efforts. That's just the ways to go about it.
So I want to touch on this real quick, because I guarantee, and even myself included, and I was going to give this at a way later episode, but there's so many different organizations out there right now. You've got AIM, you've got MAL, you've got NAM, you've got all these other organizations. So how does MAL, what's the differentiating factor? Why should people be joining? Like I said, they're lobbying, but where should loan officers, where should originators be focused? Because we're all thinking too, like, whoa, it's just one more organization. But it sounds like MAL does have, they are lobbying on our behalf.
Action Alliance. So it's a PAC. It is a PAC that covers, it is the only PAC that covers, the real estate finance, commercial, multifamily, as well as residential. And I know that there is the MBA, there's AIM, there's NAM, there's all this. Here's what I will say about that. And some people may say that I'm a blowhard, and I'm not at all. It's just, I call facts how they are. The Mortgage Bankers Association represents all three parts of this industry, one way or another. They represent, obviously, the banks. They obviously represent the mortgage bankers, independent mortgage bankers. And then some people say, well, they don't understand, they don't support the brokers. That's not true. Where are brokers sending every loan to right now? United Wholesale Mortgage, Caliber, Home Point, CMG. These are all independent mortgage bankers. And where are all the independent mortgage bankers getting their line of credits? They're not a depository, so they're getting them from depositories, and there's 80 of them or so that provide these lines of credit. So everybody is represented by the Mortgage Action Alliance and the Political Action Committee. Everybody. It doesn't matter what you are, that is represented from you. And they have had a lot of victories, because what we do not need, a lot of people talk about the challenges of Dodd-Frank. You have to understand, we were Freddy Krueger as an industry back then. Let's not even joke about this.
Yeah.
We were not viewed in high regard. Today, through the amazing work of so many people, we are viewed highly well. And the CEO of the Mortgage Bankers Association, Bob, is doing an amazing job keeping that standard going, because there is not a more important time to be involved as today. And voices do get heard. Those emails do work when there's calls to action. There is information, and they are always working on things to get it better. And the great thing, this is what I'll tell you, even though it's been a challenge as well, is we are a very bipartisan industry, which is great. The challenge we see is some people get mad that if a Democrat gets money or if a Republican gets money, it's just going to be 50-50. And I'm just going to be honest, because you shouldn't worry about the other bills or the other things people stand for. If they're pro-housing one way or another, that's not bad for our industry. That's actually a very good thing. We should actually feel fortunate that we're not, the healthcare industry or, the gun industry or anything of that industry that is so partisan. We are actually very popular. We need to keep that going. And the best way to do that is to support those that support us in the right way. And that's what I say is the Mortgage Action Alliance is a PAC that represents everybody. So it's not a trade association. It is a PAC that anybody can join. Real estate agents join. Vendors can join it. If you're impacted, you can join it. And I understand that there's other PACs that other organizations like agents have. However, for real estate finance, it is the only one that is solely impacting Congress, because all of it goes to the people of Congress.
Wow. So go ahead, Jason.
So I wanted to get into a little bit, into what we titled the this episode, and we talked a little bit this before we went live, Eddie, referencing an article in Politico about that the housing, our housing finance system and what shape it's in. And obviously now that we're getting into the election, this is when everyone starts to decide to, instead of going to hey, let's just be tempered and look at it logically, let's go to one extreme or the other, right? That's just what we're going to do. So with that, we have a lot, senators, we had, what was it? John Kennedy talked about being a dumpster fire. Where, in your opinion, is our housing system worse off today than it was in 2008?
No. However, I will, that's a simple answer. Because when I was in DC, it was pretty cool. We got to meet with, people from everywhere. So this is just so much knowledge, and obviously so many more conversations can be had. So anybody can reach out to me about it. But the angle that they're going with dumpster fire is the old saying, liars figure, figures lie. Yeah. Fannie and Freddie only have $6 billion, and they have about $6 trillion in assets. Yes, on paper that looks terrible. However, the industry got bailed out. Those two got bailed out by $190 billion, and they have paid back $310 billion.
Wow.
They paid back, but how conservatorship was done is they can't raise capital, even though they've been able to raise some.
Yep.
So they had to give it back to the Treasury, which is understandable. The Treasury made an investment, you get an investment back.
Yep.
However, that is what is really pushing the reform, because that is where it's getting viewed. And you have, like you said, Senator Kennedy said it was a dumpster fire. Senator Brown from Ohio talked about how it's going to make, if we don't do, the plans that were laid out by the Trump administration, is going to make housing more expensive for the first-time home buyer. The Mortgage Bankers Association, and I'm going to be co-chairing it with Christy, who's vice chair, who's a future MBA chairman of affordable housing, when a lot of it has to do with regulation. So we're in a much better position. We could be in a better position because obviously if we can make some of these changes to the regulations. However, the CFPB said a great thing in our meeting, which was what had a lot of lenders, scared for so long, was there will not be rulemaking by enforcement. So in other words, you're not going to know if you stepped out of line and then all of a sudden you're going to get your knees capped. You're just not. And that is a great thing, because at least there is certainty. At least your stand where we stand. And once again, those are appointments of 5 years. So if there are changes in the administration, that does not mean that that is going to change overnight. Because as we remember, when there was a change in administration, Cordray stayed on for a few years because that was part of his term.
Yep.
So to say we're worse off, no. I mean, there's still a demand. We still have housing. You know, we don't have enough housing for how many people want to buy it. The bigger challenge I see is just culturally from the younger generation. We are noticing that when you and I all bought first-time homes, it's about 30% cheaper than what they're buying today, even when you index inflation and everything of that nature. And it's because when we've done our surveys and we see things, the younger generation wants that move-up buyer. They're like, a move-up home? Why don't I just I want to be a second-time home buyer when I'm a first. So, and I can't tell you how many people wait till they're 32 to buy their first house, and then they're buying, you know, a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house. I'm not saying they can't afford it. However, they could have afforded it 5 or 6 years later, and then they say, well, I don't know if I want to move. But that's where real estate has shown to be such a great wealth builder, is because you either hold on to the house or you sell it. Think about if somebody who's 32 today bought a house 7 years ago. Right now, they could sell it and probably get 20% down on their second house.
Yep.
And they didn't ride that wave. So we're in a much, much better situation as a country. I can't say the rest of the world is in this situation, but you know, you're seeing a tug on our GDP, not just from tariffs. You're seeing it also just the rest of the world is slowing down, which is obviously in a globalized world is affecting all of us. But to answer it, no, we are not in a worse situation because we're at all-time lows. Even if there's an uptick, underwriting standards, as we all know, and credit availability have been a lot tougher. So people can sustain it. There haven't been as many cash out loans. So the whole ATM of your house hasn't really gone into effect like was occurring in the 2000s.
Awesome. And Eddie, we actually just posted the link. If you're joining us on LinkedIn or Facebook, Jason posted the link for MAA, MAA in the links below. So you can definitely look into that. And like I said, join.
It's free. It's free, people. There is no, there's
no reason not to.
No, it's free. If you're in, the mortgage industry of any form, it's something that you should be a part of. People say, oh, I'm going to get too many emails. Dude, we get too many emails. I mean, go to StubHub, and StubHub's going to send you 45,000 emails. So come on, guys.
Yep.
This is information that can help you, and more importantly, let you understand, because even if you're an originator, if in the local community you're able to identify local issues, that even makes you a better originator. So it's even an investment in yourself.
Dude, I'm so glad you even brought that, because that's where I wanted to go with this, Eddie. Is like, there's so many people thinking like, I'm just going to focus on my business. I'm just going to feel like I'm good. I don't need to get involved. I don't have the time to get involved. I'm just going to focus on my business. Well, ladies and gentlemen in the mortgage industry, if you are not getting involved with stuff like this, we may not have, like, our industry is under fire. We have to make sure we're involved with things like this, or we may not have the industry around. It will be taken over by, entity or governmental entities, and we're screwed. So we need to get involved.
I mean, the good thing to that is, I think from an employment is everybody should get involved, not just from that side of it. Is a lot of the lobbying efforts and Congress and just people in general have done a great job, and there's been a lot of wins. So why not join on the winning team? Why not get on something that is being very productive and you get to see this? Why are you not going to be a part of this information that's going to just, like I said, is even if somebody, like we were talking about earlier about 22 and 22, even if somebody says, I just want to be me in the mirror. Forget the masses. Forget, this is my career. It's going to give you value. You're going to understand exactly what's going on. So then later when maybe there's a change in DTI, or maybe this product's not there, or this is getting taken, you'll understand ahead of time. And more importantly, we live in a day and age, like, I'd said in another interview, that pretty much sales professionals are business development people today. So the day of being, tall, dark, and handsome to get sales, more about content, and can you provide great details, but make them understand it very easily and simply. And the only way you can do that is to truly understand. Because as we say, as you ask most people what GSE reform is, they're like, oh, well, it ain't going to change my life. Or, hey, there's plenty of people doing a great job. But wouldn't you want this industry that's done such a great job, overcome such hurdles, to not just have as, one special forces unit? Wouldn't you want all the special forces from all the branches of military together fighting for us?
You bet.
It's just, I think it's something that people owe to themselves.
Dude, that's a great reference, a military reference, because we are all fighting together. When there's a war, we all need to come together. There's different branches of military, but when there's war, they're all fighting. They're back to back. They're in the trenches together. They don't care if you're, if you're a Marine or if you're an Army. Doesn't matter. And that's what the industry needs more than anything right now is we need to be back to back. Doesn't care. It doesn't matter if you're a broker. Doesn't matter if you're a retail. Doesn't matter wholesale. Doesn't matter.
A bank. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're all originators. We're all in it to help the consumer finance the American dream. That's really what we're in it. Jason and I talk about it all the time. But I want to go back to a point that you made too, Eddie, that this is critical as well. And we hear Barry Habib talk about this. We hear so many experts. This helps you just become the local expert. You're an advisor now. You are becoming more and more educated. You just don't know loan programs and like, oh yeah, DTI and this and that, and oh yeah, it's better to go FHA than conventional. Let me explain why. You are truly understanding. You're becoming a master of your craft. You're understanding your industry. If this is a career move, if you're just in it to make a short amount of money because it's a refi boom right now and you're fat and happy, great. Get the hell out, in my opinion. But you are truly you're becoming a very knowledgeable expert. So when people are asking you about it, because consumers, they hear GSE reform, like you said, they're like, what? That doesn't matter. Doesn't affect me at all. We need to be more educated as an industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the only way, like we said, is as the old saying goes, you can't change the world if you don't change yourself. And it really starts with every individual holding themselves accountable. Just spending, even if it's an hour or two, and obviously some people spend 6 to 10 hours a week studying the industry. This is just valuable information that'll make you a better originator, make you a better underwriter, make you a better processor, make you just a better professional.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody who's jumped on. John Hill's commenting. The King, Eddy Perez. Mike, thanks for joining us. Alexander, thanks for joining us. Alex Ramirez, thanks for joining us. I can only see so many people that we keep seeing scroll. And if you have questions for Eddie in regards to GSE reform, feel free to fire away and we'll try to get to them and try to get them answered. Eddie, was there anything else that stood out while you were in Washington, D.C. talking about GSE reform? Is there anything else that you really stood out that was impactful for you that you would like to share that you're like, yep, this is something that needs to be talked about more often?
Well, I definitely think, the direction of the CFPB today is great. I think the days of that concern is, I'm not going to say it's gone because they still have a job to regulate us. And regulation's good. It's not a bad thing. It's just regulation, no different than under regulation.
Yeah,
sure.
It's both detrimental. And they're definitely looking at it. And there are procedures that go into place. And just to let people know is anybody in the industry with some of this rulemaking is frustrating. So I'll say people have to have patience. They have to have patience because there is no other way around it. And we can complain about it, but that's no different than the person that's positive or negative. Just focus on the positivity. If they understand it, there are going to be some revisions, to various things. But what stood out the most is probably an overall consensus that the economy is slowing down. However, Europe is slowing down further, and Germany is right on the brink of recession. There are people that are either in recession or right there. Yes, America, what's leading to some of this interest rates is there is the trade war that's going on between the United States and China. However, a great point that I heard was that China has reported GDP growth from 6.2 to 6.7 for the last 20 years in a row. I got to call BS. And I got to call that there's understanding what's going on. And, we are close to, some of the news that's out there is that NAFTA 2.0 is getting drawn. That's going to be good because that's going to relieve, some of the tariffs that are being seen in the wood, for lumber. That's obviously going to affect home building in a good way. Japan and America are close to a free trade agreement. But you're seeing an overall consensus that American growth is slowing down, but the rest of the world has slowed down more. Europe, Asia. So America is holding on tight. The question is, can America hold on and sustain it? They could, or, the recession could happen, but it's one of those, we live in a globalized economy world. So if the rest of the world drags down, and even though America is number one in GDP, eventually it drags you down as well.
So with that, I just have to ask, because now you've mentioned the recession. Do you think, especially within the mortgage industry, we go through these cycles? There have been a lot of people talking about a recession is coming. Some people think it's going to be big. Some people is going to be smaller. Do you think that the industry is going to go through a recession?
The last recession this country went to, interest rates went to nothing, and a lot of people did well in this industry. So
that's true.
Well, and then, when the economy was growing like crazy, 17 and 18, you saw volumes drop drastically. So could the United States economy go through a recession? Absolutely. Yep. I don't have a crystal ball. I am not an economist, nor am I going to play one on TV. I have looked at some of the overlining things. The jobs report got a little bit weaker. However, the jobs in the private sector got stronger.
Yep.
So that shows you something. However, 3.7 is obviously extremely low unemployment. It can go to 4.5. And I think it's also like the interest rate thing, 17, 18 years ago when I started in the business, 6.5 wasn't that big of a deal. If you talk about 4.5 today, you have people screaming bloody murder in the streets. So it's really about perception is what I would tell you. And that's why I say is why the GSE reform and getting it right and getting it done is so important, because it's all going to be about perception. If all of a sudden everybody thinks there's a challenge, you're going to have price war and a new, credit crunch and margin compression. That's not really needed. That's self-inflicted.
Yeah, and I think what you said is right on, Eddie, and also understanding, will we go through a recession at some point? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, it's just when. It's just, and of course, just in the world we live in, when the whole yield curve happened, and then by the end of the day, everyone was talking about it, but it's just the world that we're living in right now, and saying, well, every time this has happened, blah blah blah. But it's like, well, it's happened quite a bit if you're looking like past the last since 1970. But we've only had 5 recessions, and so it will happen. And it's so funny because someone messaged me, we're like, well, and I'm like, I don't know, like nobody knows, like, and it's also it's one of those things that it can become, the more we talk about it, the more investors react to that, the more it could happen. Like it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And and then also understanding, and that's what I think a lot of people like to try to dumb this down and be simple about it, but I think what you said is perfect, Eddie. And what people understand is it's globalization. We're living in a world economy when it comes down to it. So it's not just like the yield curve and then all of a sudden we're in a recession, right? Like a lot of things have to happen. Plus, we don't know what's going to we don't know about what's going to happen with trade in 2 months, in 1 month, in 6 months. Like we don't know what it's going to happen next year. It's just we don't know all this. And then I just want to mention this just popped up. But today, the Treasury Secretary about 2 hours ago, it looks like, said that President Trump has approved the Treasury's plan for the reform of mortgage giants Fannie and Freddie.
So I guess this adds more validity to why everybody should join the Mortgage Action Alliance and why they need to know and be up to date. Because now I will tell you this, this is not a fear mongering. I'm not somebody who's a fear monger. This is just information and how to prepare yourself, because that's all you can do. When a storm's coming, a hurricane, you get ample notice, you can leave, you can prepare. This is all we're saying, is just be knowledgeable and just understand what's going on. And more importantly, have your voice, because there's been plenty of state level questions that come through that alliance that have nothing to do even with this, but it can affect you, that can be helped out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just had a question come in. I want to make sure. So this is Danielle Drummond. Do you think we will get hit hard by inflation about the same time GSE reform is coming?
Once again, that's an economist question.
Right.
So I will appeal to it is that you hear most people say we don't have enough inflation right now. And we've actually had disinflation, not deflation, disinflation over the last 20 years because of globalization. Because now, instead of going down to your store to buy an $800 couch, you can have one show up at your house of the same quality for $500. And purchasing power is different. But there is a lot of people argue with you there's not enough, and the target goal of 2.0 has not been reached. And that's notes from the Fed itself. Right. So
Appreciate you answering that. And again, it's kind of an economist question, but thanks for answering. And Danielle, another great question or another great comment from Danielle is GSE reform will also require originators learn their guidelines. Banking on AUS just doesn't cut it anymore. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you. She may have said one of the best things I've heard in a long time.
Right. I was going to say that is an absolute great comment, Danielle. Thanks so much for sharing that because, man, I totally agree with that. More than anything, these AUS originators, as I call them, like,
hey, DU said you could do it. Yeah, but DU didn't take this into consideration. More importantly, DU is kind of like a video game. It's what you input, and if you input something wrong, you are dead in the water.
Exactly, and it's so funny because we see that in Facebook groups when agents like, well, I always ask to see the DU, and it's like, that just because it's DU doesn't mean it gets approved, doesn't mean it closes, right? It's garbage in, garbage out, right? Like it's so funny.
Validation.
Yeah, it cracks me up.
So, well, Eddy, we appreciate your time. We're going on like 35 minutes now, and we could talk about a lot more about this. But I want to thank you because you are one of the guys. You're one of the leaders in our industry who is really at the forefront of what's going on. You're not just in it. You're not just focused on equity prime mortgage and how it's growing and how you guys are recruiting. You're here, you're lobbying, you're doing what's best for the industry. And that truly is what signifies one of the absolute leaders and influencers within our industry. So thank you so much for all that you're doing and being willing to take the time to share these things. Yeah. It's just truly inspiring to me. And it's so cool to see a leader like yourself doing that. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. This industry holds a very special place with me. I don't feel like I come to work every day. I love it. I can talk about any of this stuff. That's why I always tell people, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn because that's usually with the one that I'm on. Calling my office line is tough. You guys have my cell phone. It's just, I enjoy it. I have a passion for it. I understand being on the other side when we were, as I said, viewed as Freddy Krueger, and don't want us to ever go back to that.
Absolutely.
Don't ever.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, just to echo what Josh said, thank you for being such a champion of the industry and everyone that's in it. We need more people like you leading that way, as opposed, like you mentioned, we're all in the same boat, right? We're all either a part of it's all a symbiotic relationship between everybody, no matter what channel you're in. So it's time for us to unify and collaborate. And I think you embody that perfectly. So again, just to echo what Josh said, thanks for doing everything that you're doing, Eddy.
And John Hill actually just commented, compliment out to you, Eddy, looking to leave it better than when he came in. So, and you absolutely are, Eddy. That's a great note to end on. And guys, we want to thank you for joining us on an episode of The Shred Effect with Eddy Perez, president of Equity Prime Mortgage. You can clearly see why he is absolutely one of the leaders and why Equity Prime is absolutely dominating because it has somebody like Eddy at the helm, leading the way, helping us see what's really important as an industry. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Eddy. And if you're joining us live, make sure you comment #shred, or if you're joining us on the replay, #hustle, because you're out there hustling. But as always, Eddy, thank you so much. Guys, you gotta continue to show up, hustle,
and repeat every day.
All right, guys, see you later. Thanks, Eddy.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, guys.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you. Bye.